We live in a world where speaking up, being seen, and making noise is often mistaken for power. We're taught to announce our victories, explain our failures, defend our decisions, and constantly show the world that we're doing okay, even when we're not. But what if I told you that real strength doesn't come from the loudest voice in the room? What if the most powerful transformation happens in silence? You see, silence is often misunderstood. People assume that if you're quiet, you're weak, unsure, or invisible. But silence is not the absence of strength. It's the space where strength is born. It's where you stop pouring your energy into noise and start channeling it inward. It's where you stop reacting and begin reflecting. In silence, you don't crumble, you rebuild, you don't disappear, you return to yourself. There's something sacred about choosing silence in a world that thrives on chaos. It's a brave act to withdraw, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Because there comes a time when arguing, explaining, and proving yourself drains your soul. And you realize that not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, your plans, or your emotions. Not everyone is meant to understand your journey. And that's okay. In silence, you begin to notice what truly matters. You see where your energy goes, who drains it, and what habits no longer serve you. You start paying attention to the quiet aches in your spirit, the ones you've been ignoring for too long. You face yourself fully, sometimes for the first time, and though that process can feel heavy, it is also the beginning of something beautiful, healing, because healing isn't loud. It doesn't look like dramatic gestures or public announcements. Healing is private. It's quiet nights, gentle self, talk, deep breaths, and small victories no one else sees. And as you sit in that sacred silence, you begin to rebuild your strength from the inside out. You start choosing your peace over your pride. You begin to let go, not with a scream, but with a whisper, "This no longer serves me." And something magical happens when you stay in that silence long enough. The same world that once demanded your voice now begins to respond to your energy. Opportunities come not because you chased them, but because you aligned with them. Relationships improve or fall away based on truth, not performance. You become the kind of person who doesn't need to shout to be heard. Your presence speaks louder than words. It's in this quiet strength that your power becomes unshakable, because now your peace no longer depends on outside validation. You are no longer waiting for applause, approval, or attention to feel worthy. You have met yourself in your darkest hours, and that meeting changed everything. You've seen your own resilience, not when everything was easy, but when you chose silence over noise, healing over ego, and peace over proving. And here's the truth no one tells you. Not everyone will understand this version of you. They'll ask why you're so quiet, why you've pulled back, why you're not posting, not showing up the way you used to. Let them wonder. You don't need to explain your transformation to people who weren't there for your pain. Your silence is not distance. It's alignment. It's the quiet commitment you've made to protect your peace and focus on your growth. So if you're in a season of silence right now, don't rush it. Don't let the noise outside convince you that you're falling behind. You're not. You're preparing. You're shedding layers that no longer fit. You're listening to the quiet wisdom of your soul. And that wisdom, it knows exactly where you need to be. Trust it. Stay still. Stay grounded. Stay soft and strong at the same time. Because when you focus on yourself and stay silent, you create space for everything meant for you to arrive, not with noise, not with force, but with grace. And that, my friend, is the kind of power the world cannot take away. We live in an age of constant visibility. Every moment is captured, every thought is shared, and every achievement is posted for the world to see. We've been conditioned to believe that if no one sees our efforts, they don't count. That if we aren't explaining our choices or justifying our silence, people will misunderstand us, or worse, forget us. But the truth is, you don't owe the world an explanation, not for your healing, not for your decisions, not even for your silence. There is a quiet power in choosing not to explain yourself. It doesn't come from arrogance, it comes from self-respect. You get to a point in life where your energy becomes too precious to waste on people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You realize that constantly defending your heart, your dreams, and your process is exhausting. And you begin to understand something deeper. That those who truly see you, who genuinely care for you, don't need an explanation. They trust your silence, they honor your journey. In the past, maybe you felt the need to justify your pain, to prove that your suffering was real, to make others understand why you were hurting, why you had to walk away, why you were no longer the same. But healing teaches you something radical. It teaches you to be okay with being misunderstood. It shows you that your peace is more important than being right in someone else's story. You begin to realize that not everyone has the capacity to see your heart. Some people can only see you through the lens of their own wounds, their own insecurities. And that's not your burden to carry. You don't need to perform for their approval. You don't need to shrink to fit their comfort zone. Your journey is yours. It doesn't have to make sense to them. It just has to feel right to you. When you stop explaining yourself, you also stop asking for permission. You begin to live for your own truth instead of others' expectations. You start doing things not because they look good to the world, but because they feel good in your soul. That's where freedom begins. Not in being understood, but in being real. And the more real you become, the less you care about who's watching. There's a kind of quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're doing the inner work, even if no one else sees it. You wake up each day choosing growth over comfort, peace over performance, and truth over popularity. You stop measuring your worth by what people say, and start measuring it by how you feel when you're alone with yourself. You may lose people on this path. Not everyone can walk with you through your silence. Some will misread your stillness as distance, your boundaries as betrayal, your healing as rejection. Let them. You can't carry the weight of everyone's opinions and still fly. You weren't meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to be whole, and being whole means honoring your intuition. It means choosing not to respond when your silence says enough. It means walking away from conversations that drain your spirit and from people who only want access to your energy, not your growth. It means learning that your time, your presence, and your peace are sacred, and they do not need to be justified. There's this unspoken grace that arrives when you stop explaining. You begin to reclaim parts of yourself you once gave away too easily. You find power in your pauses. You become more intentional with your words, more mindful of your space, and more protective of your energy. You start to realize that the most profound answers you've been seeking don't come from the outside. They rise quietly from within. The world may not understand your silence, but that's not your responsibility. Your only responsibility is to honor what feels right for you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away in silence and let your peace be the loudest statement you ever make. You are not here to convince anyone of your worth. You are not here to argue your pain or defend your choices. You are here to live truthfully, to grow deeply, and to protect your peace like it's the most precious thing you own. Because it is. So let them wonder why you changed. Let them talk about your silence. Let them write their own stories about you. But you keep walking. Keep healing. Keep choosing what aligns with your soul. Because when you no longer feel the need to explain who you are or why you've chosen the path you're on, you are finally free. Free from the burden of performance. Free from the need for permission. Free from the noise that once drowned out your truth. And in that freedom, you find yourself, not the version of you others created in their minds, but the real you, the one who knows that your journey doesn't need an audience. It only needs your trust. So, let go of the need to be understood. Embrace the beauty of being misunderstood. And remember, you owe the world nothing. But you owe yourself everything. Focusing on yourself is often labeled as selfish in a world that glorifies self-sacrifice, overcommitment, and constant comparison. We are taught from an early age to pour into others, to meet expectations, to please, to perform, to be everything for everyone. But what if, in the process of being there for everyone else, you begin to lose yourself? What if constantly giving away your time, your energy, your identity leaves you feeling invisible, exhausted, and unheard? There comes a moment, quiet, powerful, when you realize you cannot keep pouring from an empty cup. That moment is not selfish, it is sacred. It is the beginning of a return to self. When you choose to focus on yourself, you are not turning away from the world. You are turning inward to heal, to rediscover, to restore the parts of you that have been neglected or silenced. You are not abandoning others, you are simply choosing not to abandon yourself anymore. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean building walls. It means setting boundaries. It doesn't mean closing off your heart. It means learning who is worthy of access to it. It's the recognition that not everyone deserves your energy, and not every situation requires your involvement. It's the gentle, steady act of reclaiming your space, your voice, your truth. For so long, many of us have measured our worth by how much we can endure, how much we can give, how much we can tolerate. But you were never meant to be a container for the expectations of others. You were meant to live fully, to breathe deeply, to take up space. Focusing on yourself is not about isolation. It's about alignment. It's the process of tuning out the noise so you can finally hear your own needs, desires, and dreams. When you begin to focus on yourself, everything shifts. You start making different choices. You begin to listen more to your intuition than the opinions around you. You start waking up not to meet deadlines and demands, but to move closer to a life that feels true. You start creating instead of comparing. You stop running and begin rooting, deeply, intentionally, into your own soul. The beauty of this journey is that it doesn't require anyone's permission. You don't need to wait for the world to give you space. You create it. You don't need applause to start healing. You begin with honesty. You sit with your pain, not to suffer, but to understand it. You stop blaming others for your emptiness and start filling yourself with your own love, your own compassion, your own presence. And something remarkable begins to happen. The more you pour into yourself, the more you overflow. Not with burnout, but with peace. Not with resentment, but with joy. You become more present in your relationships, not because you're giving endlessly, but because you're showing up whole. The people around you may not understand the boundaries you set or the silence you keep, but that's okay. This journey isn't for them to understand, it's for you to live. You learn to say no without guilt. You learn to rest without shame. You stop explaining your decisions and start honoring your feelings. You realize that your value was never in your productivity, your popularity, or your performance. It was always in your presence, in who you are when the noise fades, in who you are when you're just with yourself. And no, it's not always easy. Choosing yourself can feel lonely at first. You'll miss the distractions, the validation, the external approval. But slowly, you'll fall in love with the quiet, with your own company. With the peace that comes from not needing anything outside of you to feel complete. That peace, it's priceless. Because when you focus on yourself, you find strength in your solitude, clarity in your confusion, and direction in your stillness. You become less reactive, more responsive, less scattered, more centered, and in that centeredness, everything begins to fall into place. Not perfectly, but purposefully. Opportunities that match your energy begin to appear. Relationships that honor your growth start to flourish, and situations that no longer serve you quietly fall away. Not because you forced anything, but because you focused on your own becoming, and the universe responded with alignment. This is the truth so many people miss. You are not here to fix others. You are not here to prove your worth through sacrifice. You are here to live authentically, to grow courageously, to love intentionally. And none of that is possible unless you first choose yourself, not once, but every single day. So take the time, sit with your soul, listen to what your heart has been trying to say beneath the noise. You are allowed to be a priority in your own life. You are allowed to rest, to reset, to rise, because when you focus on yourself, not from ego, but from love, life begins to unfold in ways you never imagined. Not because you chased it, but because you made space for it, and that truly is not selfish. It's sacred. There's a quiet kind of magic that begins to unfold when you stop chasing. It's almost unnoticeable at first. A calm shift within, a small but profound change in energy. At first it feels unfamiliar, After all, we've been taught to run after everything, to pursue love, success, approval, and recognition as though they live just beyond our reach. We've been conditioned to believe that effort equals worth, that the harder we try, the more deserving we become. But what if the things meant for us don't need to be chased at all? What if they simply require alignment? There is a difference between movement and alignment, between forcing and flowing, between striving and surrendering. The world celebrates hustle, celebrates chasing, but sometimes chasing is simply fear disguised as ambition. A fear that if we stop moving, we'll be forgotten. A fear that if we don't grab hold of what we want, it will slip away. But real peace, true, lasting peace, comes not from the chase, but from the trust. When you stop chasing what isn't meant for you, something incredible begins to happen. You start to see clearly. You begin to notice how much energy you've spent trying to force things to work. Relationships that drained you, paths that resisted you, dreams that didn't quite feel like your own. You realize how long you've been running, not toward joy, but away from emptiness. And in that realization, you stop, not because you're giving up, but because you're waking up. There's a sacred kind of stillness that comes with surrender, not the kind that gives up hope, but the kind that lets go of control. You stop manipulating outcomes, stop bending yourself to fit where you don't belong. You no longer need to perform, to persuade, or to prove. Instead, you focus on becoming the version of yourself who is already aligned with the life you desire. And in doing so, you become magnetic to what's meant for you, because alignment is magnetic. When you are at peace within, the world outside starts to reflect that peace. The right people come, not because you chased them, but because your energy welcomed them. The right opportunities unfold, not because you forced them, but because you were finally open to receiving, and the wrong things, they fall away quietly, without drama, without resistance. They simply no longer match who you are becoming. You begin to see how everything in life is energy. The more frantic your chase, the more scattered your results. The more desperate your need, the more distant your desires seem. But when you choose stillness, when you choose focus, when you choose faith over fear, everything changes. You start to feel whole, even while you're still becoming. You stop needing everything to be perfect, and instead start trusting the timing of your own unfolding. And no, this isn't about doing nothing. This is about doing the inner work that no one sees. This is about letting go of what drains your spirit so you can make room for what lights you up. It's about shifting your energy from desperation to devotion, from grasping to growing. You begin to show up not because you're chasing something, but because you're aligned with something. You are no longer running after peace, you are living in it. This change doesn't always make sense to the outside world. They may not understand why you're no longer hustling for approval or competing for attention. They may question your stillness, your silence, your surrender, but that's okay, because alignment isn't loud. It doesn't need validation, it just needs your trust. You start trusting your intuition more. You learn to say no to what once felt like a yes out of obligation. You stop showing up where your energy isn't honored. And you start realizing that the things you once chased, the love, the success, the recognition, feel so much different when they arrive through peace instead of pressure, when they come because you are ready, not because you are desperate. And maybe, just maybe, you realize you didn't want some of those things after all. Maybe they were just reflections of someone else's idea of happiness. And now, as you focus inward, you begin to define your own version of joy. You build a life that feels good, not just one that looks good. You let go of timelines, of comparisons, of expectations. And in that letting go, you make space for miracles. Because the truth is, what's meant for you will never require you to abandon yourself to get it. It will not come wrapped in anxiety or coated in confusion. It will feel like clarity, like calm, like something deep inside of you finally saying, "This is right." You won't need to chase it, you'll simply need to receive it. So if you are in a season where you feel like everything is slowing down, like you're no longer in the hustle, take heart. You're not behind. You're realigning. You're shedding the need to force and learning the power of flow. You're remembering that you are not here to run after life. You are here to meet it where it meets you. And truth in peace in presence. Keep doing the work, not from fear, but from faith. Keep showing up for yourself, not to chase the life you think you should have, but to welcome the life that is meant for you. Because the moment you stop chasing and start aligning, everything that is truly yours begins to find its way. Not loudly, not all at once, but quietly, gently, and always right on time. When you begin to prioritize your healing, it doesn't always look like a grand transformation. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or big breakthrough. More often than not, healing looks like the small, uncelebrated decisions you make daily, the ones no one notices, but that change everything over time. It's deciding to respond with patience instead of anger. It's choosing to walk away from what hurts you, even when it's familiar. It's waking up and facing another day, even when your heart feels heavy. These quiet choices shape the foundation of your healing, slowly and steadily. Healing is not always beautiful. Sometimes it's messy, uncomfortable, and full of contradictions. You'll have days when you feel strong and hopeful, and days when the sadness returns without warning. You'll question your progress, doubt your direction, and wonder if you're truly getting better. But even in those moments of doubt, healing is happening. Because every time you choose to keep going, every time you choose not to give up on yourself, that is healing. It may not feel like it, but it counts and it matters. Healing also requires courage. The courage to look inward, to face your own reflection without flinching. To sit with your past, your pain, and your patterns, and ask yourself what needs to change. Not because you're broken, but because you're evolving. You're learning to break cycles, not repeat them. You're learning to forgive, not just others, but yourself. You're learning to let go of guilt, shame, and expectations that no longer belong to the person you are becoming. You'll start to realize that healing is not about forgetting what happened to you. It's about choosing not to be defined by it. It's about creating a life that honors your growth, not your grief. Yes, there will always be moments that hurt. There will always be stories your heart remembers. But healing means those stories no longer control you. They no longer dictate how you love, how you live, or how you see yourself. And as you heal, you begin to see your worth more clearly. You stop seeking validation from people who couldn't recognize your value, and you start surrounding yourself with those who celebrate your growth, not resent it. You learn to protect your energy, to say no when it's necessary, and to stop apologizing for needing time, space, and peace. You understand that not everyone is meant to walk with you on your healing journey, and that's okay. You're not walking for them, you're walking for you. There's a powerful shift that occurs when you take your healing seriously. You no longer entertain what drains you. You don't chase after people who walk away. You stop trying to prove your worth and start living it. You become more mindful of your thoughts, more intentional with your time, and more selective about who and what you give your heart to. You learn that your peace is not a luxury. It is a necessity. You also realize that healing doesn't mean constant happiness. It means emotional honesty. It means giving yourself permission to feel your feelings without judgment, to cry when you need to cry, to rest when you're tired, to fall apart when things feel heavy, and to trust that you will rebuild stronger than before. Healing isn't about being perfect, it's about being whole. And wholeness includes every part of you, your joy and your sorrow, your light and your darkness, your past and your future. It's easy to assume that healing is a destination, a final point where everything will suddenly make sense. But the truth is, healing is a journey, a lifelong one. There will always be new layers to uncover, new lessons to learn, and new versions of yourself to embrace. But with each step you grow. With each moment of self-kindness, you become more of who you were always meant to be. Eventually, you'll look back and realize how far you've come. You'll see that the pain didn't destroy you. It shaped you. That the silence wasn't emptiness. It was space for clarity. That the time you spent alone wasn't loneliness. It was reconnection. You'll understand that your healing wasn't loud because it didn't need to be. It was steady. It was sacred, and it was yours. So if you're in a season of healing, be gentle with yourself. Don't rush the process. Don't compare your journey to anyone else's. What you're doing is brave. What you're doing is enough. Every moment you choose peace over chaos, compassion over criticism, love over fear. You are healing. Quietly, powerfully, beautifully, and in time, without needing to prove anything, you will rise. Not as someone who was never broken, but as someone who chose to heal anyway. Someone who faced the darkness and decided to bring their own light. Someone who stopped performing and started living. Someone who chose themselves not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. That is the heart of healing, and it is nothing short of extraordinary. Staying silent is often misunderstood. In a world that constantly demands noise, opinions, reactions, replies, silence can feel unnatural, even weak. But true silence is not the absence of voice. It is the presence of strength, of inner knowing, of discipline. Silence is where power lives. Not the kind that shouts to be heard, but the kind that listens to understand. The kind that doesn't need to explain, prove, or justify. The kind that is rooted, calm, and unshakable. There comes a time in life when you realize that not everything requires your reaction. Not every criticism deserves a response. Not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. And not every situation benefits from your voice. Sometimes your silence speaks louder than your words ever could. It says, I know who I am. It says, I don't need to be pulled into chaos to prove my clarity. It says, your opinion of me is not my responsibility. This silence is not weakness. It is wisdom. As you grow, you begin to understand that your energy is sacred, that not everyone is worthy of access to your thoughts, your truth, your time. You learn that peace is far more valuable than winning an argument. That clarity is more precious than being understood by those determined to misunderstand you. That staying silent is not giving up, it's letting go. It's refusing to carry burdens that don't belong to you. Silence creates space to breathe, to reflect, to respond instead of react. When you are silent, you are not empty. You are full of awareness, full of observation, full of understanding. In the quiet, you begin to see things you missed before. The way certain patterns keep repeating. The way some words are used not to connect but to control. The way your peace gets disrupted every time you try to prove your worth to someone who can't see it. There's a deep kind of self-respect that is born in the quiet. You stop needing to explain yourself to people who never listened in the first place. You stop arguing with those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You realize that silence doesn't mean you're passive. It means you're protecting your peace. You are choosing to rise above the noise instead of being consumed by it. This kind of silence doesn't always feel easy, especially when you're used to defending yourself, justifying your actions, or trying to be understood. But growth teaches you that not everyone deserves your story. Not everyone needs to hear your side. Sometimes the best thing you can do is say nothing and let your life speak for you. Let your growth, your healing, your boundaries, your joy. They will say more than your words ever could. And slowly you'll start to notice a change. You won't be so easily triggered. You won't feel the need to rush in and fix everything. You'll start choosing peace over pride, calm over conflict, not because you've lost your voice, but because you've found your power. You've learned that silence is a language all its own, a language of self-control, of maturity, of inner freedom. When you stay silent, you begin to hear your own soul more clearly. You stop drowning in the noise of others' expectations and begin tuning into your own truth. You hear the quiet whispers of your intuition guiding you, the soft reminders of your worth, the gentle call toward your purpose. You begin to respond to life from a place of groundedness, not reactivity. And in that silence, everything starts to make sense. You realize that most battles are not worth fighting, that your peace is not something you are willing to compromise for temporary validation, that growth doesn't need to be announced, just lived. The people meant for you will feel your energy, not just hear your words, and those who don't understand your silence are not meant to walk this part of the journey with you. You begin to understand the difference between silence that suppresses and silence that strengthens. This is not the silence of fear or submission or avoidance. This is the silence of sovereignty, of choosing your battles, of refusing to lose yourself trying to be heard by those who aren't ready to listen, of knowing that your truth doesn't require an audience, it only requires your alignment, and this silence becomes a sanctuary, a place where you can rest, where you can reconnect, where you can rise. You stop reacting to every trigger, every provocation, every invitation to conflict. You start responding with clarity, or not at all. You no longer feel the pressure to fill every space with your voice because you've discovered that silence can be just as powerful, if not more. Over time, people will begin to notice the change. They'll see the way you carry yourself differently, the way you no longer rush to defend your name or argue your worth, the way you protect your peace like a priceless treasure. They may not understand it, but that's okay. Your silence isn't for them. It's for you. It's for your healing, your growth, your clarity. And in that sacred silence, you begin to find yourself. Not the self shaped by others' opinions, but the self that exists beneath all the noise. You begin to realize how little you need to say when you are deeply rooted in who you are. How freeing it is to no longer be controlled by the need to be seen, heard, or approved. So you stay silent, not because you're hiding, but because you've found a deeper truth. One that doesn't need to shout, one that doesn't need to fight, one that simply is, and in that silence everything begins to fall into place. So when you focus on yourself and stay silent, you're not disconnecting from the world. You're reconnecting with yourself. You're not avoiding life. You're learning to move through it with intention, grace, and strength. In a world that rushes, reacts, and reaches for validation, choosing inner peace over outward noise is a quiet rebellion. But in that rebellion, you find freedom, you find clarity, you find alignment, and one day, without warning, you'll look around and realize that the things you once chased now surround you. Not because you fought for them, but because you became someone who no longer needed to. You simply allowed them to arrive on their own time, in their own way, and exactly when you were ready. That's the power of focusing inward. That's the magic of silence, and that is how, piece by piece, everything begins to fall into place.